Hey, David Brewster here with an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Van Halen. And I know for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people watching this, Eddie Van Halen's the entire reason I started playing guitar. And when I was a kid, I kind of spotted him on MTV, and I didn't really even understand like who he was or what he was doing. I just saw this guy jumping around, smiling, with a guitar in his hands, and to my eyes, I mean, he looked like Superman. I was like, who is this guy? And the next thing I knew, I was begging my parents for a guitar, and I was obsessed, hopelessly. And he still remains a very big influence on me because regardless of what I've done and studied, going to school and studied classical guitar and jazz and a bunch of stuff, um, at the core of me as a musician, Eddie kind of stays there. It's almost like he really is kind of the center of my musical universe. So I saw Van Halen a total of 7 times back in the day, but technically that was Van Hagar with Sammy in the band. Because by the time I discovered who Van Halen was and finally got a guitar, the original Van Halen was already done. They were over and done with long before I even touched a guitar, for the first time. So don't make fun of me or, point fingers or throw rocks. I can't help when I was born. But as soon as, his influence kind of hit me and I started reading, interviews in magazines and started buying their albums, I was hooked. Okay, to kick things off here, Eddie's obviously a very big fan of traditional, power chords and bar chords, and you'll find a lot of just kind of standard, traditional sounds in his music. And if you go through, like transcription books of, Van Halen's music, if you took a highlighter or a pencil and just circled every time you saw, the A power chord, the D, and an E power chord, those 3 chords are in almost every Van Halen song, regardless of, what era or what song it is. You'll find A's, D's, and E's as far as power chords in lots of Van Halen stuff. So he loves those 3. He'll also play, kind of a G power chord this way, where you're muting, the A string with the underside of your middle finger. Kind of a C sus2, played that way. And then maybe a D. And you could hear that like the intro of Somebody Get Me a Doctor, G, C, and D. Once you get beyond, just those basic power chords and, some of the little extensions there like that C sus2, you can find Eddie doing a lot of interesting things with different types of chords. Take the intro from Little Dreamer, from their debut. And there he's really just playing with C minor 7. Think of that, almost like a jazzy, minor 7 chord. And then he moves down and does the same thing in G minor 7. One of the first Van Halen riffs I could actually play, when I was a kid, because it reminded me of the minor pentatonic scale, and then I just kind of, figured out how to kind of move that around. You can also catch him doing something similar to that in the song Light Up the Sky. So after the intro with that kind of chromatic, power chord that walks up, you'll hear something like this. And it's really interesting the way he's kind of like shifting and sliding, between those chords. Really, really cool stuff. Also from Van Halen too, their cover of the song You're No Good. In the very beginning, you can catch him doing volume swells with chords. And definitely you can hear Eddie doing this, in this song, but you can also hear him doing that in songs like Cathedral and a lot of other, Van Halen songs where he would kind of sneak that volume knob in. So here he's really just playing, part of an A minor chord, but way up, higher on the fretboard. He strums the chord with the volume knob off and then rolls the volume on. And he does a G over A, like that. And then a D, and then a C over A. So he's really just kind of walking down this little 4-chord, progression. And I always love that, kind of sneaky, volume controlled, swelling of the chords. Really, really cool. One of Eddie's big chord secrets, which really, if you've ever worked on any Van Halen's music before, it's not really a secret because you can see him sprinkling these in all of their songs, just about. But he loves sus chords, suspended chords, sus2 and sus4. And you'll find Eddie playing different versions of these chords in tons of their songs. So if you're not really familiar with what sus chords are, take any major or minor chord, and we're going to basically replace the third with either the second or the fourth. And by doing that, that will create a sus chord. So let's just look at like a C major bar chord right here. Alright, so the third is this E note that's on the B string right there. So if we remove that note and replace it with, say, this D right here on the 3rd fret on the B string, then that becomes C sus2, right? Very distinct, Van Halen sounding chord. And instead of, going to D, if we move up and grab F right here on the B string, then that's going to change it to a C sus4. So these chords have been around for, hundreds and hundreds of years. You can hear it in classical music and all those, great like little cadences, and just, kind of voice leading that you can kind of hear between those chords. So you can do that almost anywhere. There's C. Move it up a whole step, there's D. Move it up another whole step, there's E. So think of, Panama. Or think of, other Van Halen songs, Dance the Night Away. In both Panama and Dance the Night Away, you can catch Eddie, mixing sus chords with like slash chords, basically. Like think of that as part of a B chord, but he's using it, with an E root there. So he's kind of, changing that. I guess you could almost think of that as like an E major 7 with a sus2 right there. Or like an E major 9, I guess. Really interesting, series of chords. Eddie is definitely not a chord slouch. I mean, he has a very massive, chord vocabulary, and he's very well known for his rhythm ability. A lot of, musicians and guitarists consider him one of the greatest, rock rhythm guitar players of all time. And I know a lot of people just kind of consider him or think of him as a lead guitarist, with tapping and all the crazy licks and stuff. But really, his rhythms are phenomenal, So if you're looking for some different approaches to rhythm, or maybe just some, unusual or different ways of putting songs and guitar parts together, study some Van Halen. I mean, it's a classic, influence, and a very revealing way of kind of showing you how you can put guitar parts and riffs and ideas together. So like in the song Panama, for instance, during the interlude, you'll hear, it's an F major 13 flat 5. And that's a very, jazzy chord voicing. But but it tied in, right in the middle of a Van Halen song. So think of that interlude. And think of that. Very interesting and kind of sick sounding chord, but it's perfect, in that interlude bridge of Panama. The last example here is from one of my favorite Van Halen songs, and this is Hear About It Later, which is from Fair Warning, which is that album, which is honestly my absolute favorite Van Halen album. I love all the classics, the original batch of albums, but for whatever reason, Fair Warning really, sings to me. Van Halen 2 is also a big one that I really like, and of course I love the debut and Diver Down in '84 and Women, Children First, but there's something about Fair Warning. It's just dark and angry. Something like that. It's missing the flanger too, but that's a really cool guitar part. I've always loved the way he kind of put all that together, and I also like the fact that he's using drop D, and he discovered all these kind of mutations and variations of chords in that tuning, which I know when I learned that and Unchained and some other Van Halen songs, it kind of gave me this license to experiment with chords, because I noticed he was doing it all the time. And I thought, well, I'm going to learn how to do that too. He's doing this really interesting, it's kind of an A5 to an A sus2. And there's a lot of sus2 action in this song. So this kind of proves, what I was saying earlier as far as Eddie's fascination with those sus chords. But you're doing, like right there, he's kind of playing with this D add 11, which is really, pretty common. You can hear that in music from Pink Floyd and Def Leppard, and here's, Van Halen playing with it. Then it's going to move to an F major 7 sus2, which we are in drop D, so that's going to look like this. It's going to drop down to an E flat, flat 5, and then just resolve that to E flat, and there he's really just kind of picking through that E flat chord, and there he just basically walks up until he gets into that G right there, and that would be like a G sus2. It's going to end with this little F sus2. So all in all, we put all those parts together. That's a killer, chord workout, and a really cool, intro part for that song. That's going to wrap this brief look at the Chords of Van Halen, and of course I could make 10 episodes of Chordplay, surrounding Eddie Van Halen. I didn't even get into like the Van Hagar, era, and if anything, and I'm a huge original Van Halen fan, but really Eddie kind of became really creative when he worked with Sammy, and I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion, but he really kind of pushed himself, came up with some new licks and some new tapping ideas, came up with all kinds of interesting, chords and riffs and patterns, in those songs. So there's a wealth of ideas you can get from tapping into Eddie Van Halen. All right, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more lessons and material. Thank you.